for everyone's information, it is now streaming on YouTube.
Excellent.
Just for anyone who may have missed it and to avoid us just sitting in silence for too long, we're giving a couple minutes to wait for the chairman, Fred Cafasso, to join in. I think Leo may have called him, so just going to give that a couple minutes.
Matt,
Yes, sir.
who is currently the acting building commissioner?
Acting right now is Michael Desmond.
Thank you.
Yep.
There he is.
Welcome, Mr. Cafasso.
Connect.
Good evening.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hi.
Good evening.
Hi, Fred.
You see me?
Yep.
Okay, good.
So, Fred, the floor is yours. We are streaming live on YouTube now. So,
Have we
It's actually you, Matt.
called the roll of officers, the roll of attendance?
all right. Leo Pisano.
Yeah.
Michael O'Connor.
Yeah.
George D'Angelo.
Yeah.
Cheyenne Rangel.
Yeah.
Phil Mastrocola.
Yeah.
James Tarr.
Here.
And Chairman Cafasso.
Present. Would you read the disclaimer, please?
You got it. This is the planning board meeting, January 25th, 2021 at 7 p.m. In response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12, 2020, the Everett Planning Board shall be meeting remotely until further notice. The audio conferencing application Zoom will be used for this purpose. An online link and telephone access number will be provided on all meeting agendas and also on the city's website. No in-person attendance of members is permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the city's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. This application will permit the public to access and participate in future board meetings and hearings. Instructions for joining meetings in this manner will be provided on the city and city clerk's websites. We extend our thanks for your understanding and participation in this matter, which is intended to keep members of the board and the public safe.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First order of business, please.
First order of business, Mr. Chairman, is item 1 under old business. This is a site plan review for 34 Market Street, which is a proposal for the redevelopment of the parcel, including the demolition of an existing 69,200 square foot warehouse and the construction of a one-story 221,800 square foot last mile distribution warehouse located at 34 Market Street. That being a parcel of land referenced by Assessor's Department as H0-17-000076. This matter was continued from the November 10th, 2020 meeting.
Thank you. The petition is here.
Right here, Mr. Chairman. Evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Very pleased to be here with you guys one more time. This is our third time on bringing to you guys the exciting redevelopment of the 34 Market Street property. This is, for me personally, the culmination of almost a 2-year process since the Davis started looking at this at the acquisition for this property, and subsequent discussions that we had that we presented at previous hearings with regards to an agreement that we have with the city to fix what is otherwise a failing piece of drainage infrastructure that traverses through the site. And we are very excited to be able to do that. Obviously, what it's allowing the Davis companies to take such an expensive, if you will, endeavor to help out the drainage issues in the city of Everett is the approval that's before you tonight. So we presented the project, I think, twice. We went through a peer review process, and I think out of that process, the project is much better. And we are very excited. I have my civil engineer, my traffic engineer here as well, in case there's any additional questions. But yeah, we are very excited to be able to get going with this project. So I don't know if you guys have any pending questions for my engineers at the moment.
Go ahead, Leo.
We did have, a couple of us had the same point the last time, and it had to do with them not having a tenant. So you don't know what the traffic demands are on the project. So if the project is accepted tonight, would the applicant, when they choose a tenant, come back to explain to us about the tenant and what the traffic demands will be down there?
So Mr. Chairman, as previously discussed, we're trying to permit this project as a spec building. We don't yet have a tenant, as you pointed it out. And to do so, we provided data to the peer reviewer, who I see is on the line right now, sort of justifying, a traditional type of warehouse operation versus an e-commerce type of operation. So I think what we've demonstrated so far is that regardless of the tenant that we ultimately get on this site, the data will justify the usage, if you will. I don't know, Zach, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, we did look at the traffic study that HSH provided. It's a similar type of facility, just using a different type of truck, not tractor trailer trucks as much. They did a pretty comprehensive analysis of several signalized intersections, several non-signalized intersections. They had some very good existing data pre-COVID to compare with, which is a good thing because traffic obviously during this COVID period is a little different. And the one comment that we had that they subsequently provided more data with was, what happens during the holiday period and the traffic demands during those periods. And that was the biggest concern. And they came back with some, pretty good information that sufficed made us feel comfortable with the study with that additional demand. And other similar facilities, it's the end user is really not the issue. It's the type of facility that we look at. So that said, I think in the traffic realm of things, Ty and Bond is very comfortable with what's proposed.
I mean, we are having a little problem with I think it's Amazon that's down that area, that they were expanded their business. And I don't know if they came back, but there was a problem down there. We just want to protect ourselves that not knowing who the tenant is, that if they get one that's going to put a high usage, what recourse does the city have to go back to the applicant and say, geez, your tenant got everything choked up down there. What are you going to do about it? Do we have that recourse? That's all. Zach, I'm asking you, I guess, that question.
Yeah, no, I think, it's not a question of recourse, more so crossing the T's and dotting the I's now. The traffic projections and truck traffic quantities that are projected are, only a tiny bit higher. And the analysis they showed with the models they ran at the intersections doesn't overwhelm those intersections or put them over capacity. And that's kind of the main thing that you can look at in the engineering realm, pre and post conditions. That said, also the types of vehicles that are going to be used are, more mobile, easier to navigate through the city as opposed to tractor trailer trucks. So that's a benefit there as well.
So I guess my question to you is then, if they max out the usage of this building, whichever it would be, they wouldn't impact the traffic down there to a point that you can't get around, basically.
Yep, according to the projections that are provided,
Okay.
That is the case.
Fine, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
I got a question, Zach. When you say that you're using smaller vehicles, is that for always, or can that change to like tractor trailers?
Well, there's some degree of tractor trailers that I understand that'll be going in there, much lesser extent than what's out there now. I guess I defer to you, Chris, on a change in usage later on. I wouldn't anticipate that based on the way the facility's set up now. And I don't think there's any plans for that, but.
Yeah, I think, Liz, maybe you can speak a little bit to just kind of like the difference between, what you would anticipate on a more normal warehouse operation relative to like an e-commerce, which we presented both sets of data to Ty and Bond. So I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to that.
Sure, I can do that. Thank you. My comments would be that it's important to remember that pre-COVID, this facility was operating with 2,600 vehicle trips a day. So it was very active, created a lot of traffic in the existing fabric, the existing network, if you will, of the roadways out there. Those trips are all going away. Our projections for whether it be a warehouse or an e-commerce distribution facility, we did look at a variety of different industrial uses that could occupy that site. Regardless of what goes in there, none of those would generate that peak of 2,600 vehicle trips a day that's occurring on the peak day, or was occurring on the peak day out there at the relatively recent facility out there. The existing facility was generating primarily wide body truck trips. So, 60 up to 67 foot trucks coming in and out, which, as was pointed out, they're less flexible. They can't move as quickly. They take longer to make turns, as compared to What we're anticipating potentially out there is some sort of e-commerce facility. Even so, the mix of vehicle types are not expected to have that very high percentage of large trucks.
When you say trucks, are you talking like panel trucks, similar to what we see Amazon going by with those step vans?
So should the tenant be an e-commerce distributor, the largest vehicles would be a panel van of some kind. So yes, it would be a relatively small truck, certainly small van, certainly compared to, you know, a longer 67-foot tractor trailer. Maybe I'm in the silence. I would just add that I believe, as Zach pointed out, the proposed facility has about 6 or 7 loading bays for those larger trucks. However, looking at the trip distribution over the course of the day, those are expected to enter the site overnight and leave again overnight. So certainly during the day, during the peak commuter hours, the site would not be generating a large number of large truck trips. And I hope
Thank
that
you.
answered the question. You're welcome.
Any other questions of Elizabeth?
Well,
Any
Leo's question was, if it's a different type of tenant, would we have any recourse depending on their business? And that question was not answered. Would we have any recourse? Or can they just put any tenant they want in there when the time comes? Since they don't currently know what tenants is going in there.
Chairman, would you like me to address that question?
Yes, please.
I mean, honestly, so long as they're operating within the approval, you're not going to have much in the way of recourse. And so, you know, that's why we do the peer review now. But the condition is, as the decision is written, no, you would not be able to bring them back, you know, as long as they're using the property within zoning, as long as it doesn't, you know, as long as they're operating within what they've proposed, as far as their site plan goes and what's been approved and the conditions in the decision, then it was not likely. You know, certainly if there was a major issue, we would take a hard look, but not likely that you would have an easy route to bring them back. It's, you know, it's always possible depending on the issue. It's hard to predict exactly what the issue would be, but I mean, once you issue the decision, that's the decision.
Thank you.
But we could make that a condition.
We certainly could, we could look at a condition. I'm not, I think we'd have to give some thought, you know, to exactly what you're trying to accomplish and what we can do within your discretion.
Okay, no, that's all right. No,
We certainly could look into that, absolutely.
well, we're not going to hold up the applicant for that. I don't think that's fair to the applicant. They've kind of put a good faith effort into this project. But I just don't want, as Mr. D'Angelo points out, and it's Mr. Mastrocola, you just don't want to turn around and someday they have a different tenant in there that maybe the tractor trailer trucks don't come in at night. They come in during the daytime. That's all.
Well, I mean,
it's just
certain,
you got an awful big area going on down there, and we lose all control over it. I mean, the traffic department can go down there and you know, try to mitigate the problem, but you like to anticipate it. And I think 3 or 4 of us have brought that same point out. That's all. You just don't want to lose control.
well, I mean, if the major concern is tractor trailer, I mean, the applicants here, we certainly could discuss the condition now about, you know, limits on the time at least of traffic trailer delivery or what have you. It's not really, I mean, you're the board, so I'm happy to consider whatever you guys want to suggest and help with that. But I mean, the applicant's here if you want to talk about it.
No, I just want the applicant to understand that if it gets jammed up down there, the board might turn around and say, we'd like to have you come back and tell us what's going on down there. It's just a simple request. It's not a demand. You don't need to put it into writing. I mean, this is all being recorded. You just don't want someone later on saying, gee, what'd you guys do? You let all those tractor trailers down there all day long. Well, no, we didn't. They're only supposed to go there at night. Well, didn't you figure they could come there in the daytime? Well, yeah, we did. What would you do about it? Well, I'd like to give the citizens an answer to say, you know, we did this, and it was a good solution to the problem. So I think if the applicant is willing, that just on a gentleman's agreement to say, yeah, if we get a problem down there, of course we'll come back and try to mitigate it, try to talk it over, try to resolve it. That's all.
That's a suggestion.
Not trying to put his feet to the fire.
Phil, did you have a comment?
No, it's just a suggestion. That's all that we're doing, you know.
Yeah.
We're not saying it.
It's kind of hard right now to monitor who the tenant is
Yeah,
and what they plan to bring in and bring out.
Okay. I know.
You know, I don't have an answer either.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
looking down in the future, yeah, we could be seeing more larger vehicles at different times than what we're talking about tonight.
Well,
And
that's the,
what do we do? What do we do? Do we stop commerce and say, you can't bring those trucks down there? I'm sorry. I don't think that's going to be a feasible answer. So I'm only saying what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm open for suggestions as well. However, can't stop progress, as they say.
well, I'm just looking at a citizen's point of view too, you know. Looking at the traffic that you have to deal with on a regular basis, but it's a suggestion, you know, we're looking at it, you know.
I guess we'll face that when the time comes, huh? That if there's a problem
That's it.
down there,
That's
we're
it.
just gonna
Well,
bring
then,
the applicant back up with, as a courtesy, and that's it.
That's all. It's a good
Leo.
faith. It's faith, that's all.
Leo, that actually becomes a traffic commission issue.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
That is nothing.
This is Zach. I'll chime in with one other thing I just happened to notice when looking at the drawings there of the site is the loading dock that's provided for the tractor trailer trucks. You know, the capacity of just that dock, you know, it's several trucks that can fit in there at a given time, which is far, far less than the existing building. So the potential for that kind of traffic in the future is somewhat limited compared to the capacity of the existing building as well. Just physically looking at the building, it's some, you know, an observation there, if that makes you feel any better.
That's fine for me. Yeah.
All right. Any other comments? Anybody out in Zoom that might be, and YouTube or whatever, making
Mr. Chair,
comments?
I
Matt?
see no one in the chat, none of the participants. I'm scanning throughout this. I see no one with their hands up. Done.
No?
I have one brief comment.
Hello?
Hi, Jim
Yes,
Sawyer
Jay.
here. I just have a quick question. I'm just referencing the Mystic River Watershed Association letter that we received. I'm not sure if the applicant was able to take a look at that.
Mystic River Association, you said? I'm not aware of it, no.
Oh, okay. It's a letter that the organization sent in to the planning board. Just asking to take a look at, I don't know, do you mind if I read it?
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you for your consideration of our comments on the proposed Davis Company's development of the former Boston Market Terminal on 34 Market Street. We respect the quality of the Davis Companies and support their work to improve and daylight the failing culvert that was built decades ago to hold what was the tidal island and river. we ask that you include in the permitting landscape investments and maintenance commitments to take advantage of the newly uncovered waterway such that it becomes an amenity for residents and workers rather than a catch basin for airborne trash. With plantings, a walkway, benches, and appropriate signage and lighting, this investment can connect to the much larger Mystic River Greenway and other pedestrian bike paths, such as early Boston Harbor Walk investments have led to greater on the whole. That's basically the gist of the letter. So they were asking if it would be possible to have some kind of beautification entered into this as maybe a commitment on your end, if you'd be interested in helping to invest in, fairly minimal cleanup effort there if it needs it, or a little bit of beautification that could actually enhance the region as a whole.
Jim, I think I can answer that. The daylighting portion of the project's a city-funded project.
Mhm.
The developer's only doing the culvert replacement, so I happen to be the designer on the daylighting portion of it. So conveniently, I'm here tonight. But the beautification comment there, as we go through the Army Corps permitting process, they require a certain degree of plantings within the riparian buffer that we're providing, as well as bank stabilization measures. And as part of that permitting, they also require us to have a long-term maintenance plan, which was provided in that permitting as well. So maybe that partially answers your question as it relates to the daylighting.
Okay. So I just wanted to know if some of these comments are going to be encompassed in the daylighting. It sounds like you're taking them into consideration.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Tom Philbin had sent me that letter before.
Great. Thank you.
Or a version.
Yeah,
of
I think that letter was applicable to the culvert project, not the building project, if I recall. Now that you read it, I seem to recall reading it. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other question, comments? Anybody out there? Hearing none, is there any motion to close the meeting?
Can I just
Yes,
before you
please.
close the I'm sorry, this is Robin Stein again. Before you close the public hearing, I just didn't know if the applicant had any final once you close the public hearing, the discussion with the applicant will be closed. So if you all had any questions on the draft decision that you received around noon today,
Yeah, Robin,
I would just encourage you to discuss those with the board while the public hearing is open. That's all.
we just wanted to request Robin see if the language in provision number 3.
Condition 3.
Condition number 3, general condition number 3 gets changed to the version that was sent by our attorney Rebecca at 6. What's the timestamp on this email?
47.
6:47. There you go. That's all.
I don't think the board has seen that yet, so I don't know if you want to discuss that with them, but that's why I said keep the public hearing open so folks can have that conversation. The board members should all have the version that Matt sent out earlier today. Okay.
Yeah, hi, Robin. This is Rebecca Lee at Mintz, counsel to the developer. The word change, what concerned us is that the language in general condition number 3 seems to suggest that some obligations of the owner are obligations of the tenant, and they are most definitely the obligations of the Davis companies as the developer of this property. For example, the potential of a sewer relocation and various and other development-oriented responsibilities, whereas, encouraging people to use public transportation and the stuff, operational responsibilities could well be obligations of the tenant. So we didn't want to blur the line here that ultimately the Davis companies is responsible for what happens at the site, and we accept and own that responsibility. So we had proposed a minor tweak to that language after a conversation that I had with Robin's partner to try to recognize that.
Do you want to share the proposed change with the board?
Yeah, sure. The language that is in there speaks about successors and assigns, and we had proposed language that would separate that we're responsible for everything, but the tenant is only responsible for operational matters. I'm sorry, I'm just having a hard time finding the language that I sent today. Where is it? Chris, I'm happy to have you read it.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up myself.
Yeah.
I have it in front of me. I don't know if,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry, here it
Please.
is.
Yeah.
Here's the language. Just change it to read the provisions of this decision as condition shall apply to and be binding upon the project and project site and upon the owner and applicant and its successors and signs as to all provisions and upon each of owner's tenants as to operational matters during the term of such tenancy. So it also makes clear that a tenant is responsible while they're in the building, but not after or before.
for the board, I can say that both myself and Robin have reviewed this, and from our end, we're amenable to the change. Again, this is ultimately the board's decision to make, but from our end, we're okay with it.
Okay. Thank you for the update.
And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we have any other issues that we wanted to raise, correct?
We're all set otherwise.
Thank you.
Robin, is it okay to ask for closure of the meeting?
Are you all ready to vote on the draft decision?
Are the other members ready to vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then, yep, I think that it makes sense. Then you can close the public hearing and then you can have a motion. And if you want, I can suggest a motion on the actual vote.
Right. Chair will entertain a motion to close the public hearing for 34 Market Street.
Make a motion to close the public meeting for 34 Market Street.
Second motion.
A motion has been made and seconded to close the public hearing for 34 Market Street. Roll call vote, please.
Leo Pisano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangel,
Yes.
and Chairman Cafaso.
Yes. Meeting is closed. Public hearing, that is. Now, Robin, you have a draft that you'd like to read on how we should vote, please?
I would just suggest a motion to grant the application for site plan review for 34 Market Street as set forth in and conditioned in the draft decision presented to and reviewed by the board, subject to the change to condition 3 discussed with the board at the meeting this evening.
Do you have a motion on that, please?
I'll make a motion for favorable action. The site plan review for 34 Market Street with conditions that are described in the final draft special permit decision and language change to item number 3 as described this evening.
And it's just a site plan decision, just for clarity.
Site plan decision.
Yep. Thank you, Leo.
Okay. thank you.
Second motion.
Motion is made and seconded for favorable action for 34 Market Street site plan review. Roll call vote.
Leo Pisano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangel,
Yes.
and Chairman Cafaso.
Yes. Motion is passed unanimously.
Did Michael second that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. just
Michael
a minute.
seconded that,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Appreciate it, everybody.
Congratulations.
Good luck, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck.
8:30, right? Okay. Next order of business, please.
Next order of business is item number 2 under old business. This is a site plan review for 48 Nichols. This is a proposal for the redevelopment, including the demolition of an existing single-family house and the construction of a new 3-story, 6-unit residential building located at 48 Nichols, that being a parcel of land referenced by Assessor's Department as M0-08-000178. This matter was continued from November 10th, 2020, and I will inform the board that today, a few hours before the meeting, the applicant had reached out to me requesting a continuance until the next meeting, which would be the first meeting in February 8th, 2021.
Hearing that, Chair will entertain a motion for continuance for 48 Nickel Street.
Motion for continuance to 48 Nickel Street. So what was it, February 21?
February 8th.
February 8th.
At 7 PM on Zoom?
Yeah, hang on, yeah. Yeah, make a motion for continuance, site plan review 48 Nichols Street till February 8th at 7 o'clock on Zoom.
Second,
Motion has been made and seconded for continuance of 48 Nichols Street until February 8th via Zoom. Roll call vote, please.
Leo Pizzano,
Yes,
Michael O'Connor,
yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangle,
Yes.
and Chairman Cafaso.
Yes. Motion is continued.
can I just talk?
Next
on that?
order, please.
1 second, Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a question on that,
Sure.
Nichols Street project? When it first came before us, I know because of the untimely passing of Jim Sopa, we were left without a building inspector, and all of a sudden, Mike takes over, Mike Desmond, good man, and he really took the project, let's say, apart, and it becomes now an issue of what comes before what? Is he, now, this applicant has to go before us first or before the ZBA first? I know you were gonna change it, Matt. I didn't know what happened. Does this come under that change?
So it's the potential change, which again, it's not, nothing is finalized yet. The potential change would grant the applicant the right to choose between which board he or she would like to go before first. I would say, you know, a snapshot of today, the applicant is before this board, and the applicant will remain before this board because the information I have today is that no such change has been made, and therefore he would stay here.
So that applicant now has to take all those faults that the building department brought up, correct them before they come before us. Am I correct in that? And that's just a question. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that they have on there, and I don't know if that's why he backed off or for whatever. I don't know what Mr. Antonelli does, but it's up to him. But I'm just saying, if that came before us tonight as is, would we be able to vote on it properly with all those flaws, or do we have to mitigate those flaws at our meeting? We're not zoning. I'm just saying that whole act was not cleaned up because of all the comments from the building inspector. That's all.
If I can jump in, I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
No, go ahead, Robin. I'm sorry. No.
Sorry, to your question, I mean, I don't want to go too far into this since you already voted to continue it, and there could be folks that have already jumped off because of that. But I think it's fair to give the applicant a chance to look at the comments, and 2 weeks is not a long time, so we can discuss it with him on the 8th. And I'm sure he can reach out to staff in the meantime, but I do want to just, where you guys have already taken that vote, I don't want to go too far in the conversation.
That's absolutely correct. Thank you.
Miss a member of the public.
And I agree with you. We don't want to let the applicant, it's only fair to him that he gets enough time. So I'm saying February.
Well, it's been continued, Leo.
Okay.
Leo, it's been continued.
Yes, Fred.
Whatever time he needs, he can continue with it again.
Okay.
However, right now it's continued to the 8th.
Very good.
And we really shouldn't be talking about it. Next order of business, please.
Chair, the next order of business, item number 3, it's a zoning amendment, transportation demand management. And I was informed by Robin, I do not have to read the whole thing, so I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm going to read it for you, Matt, as we go through it. That's my job.
It's a continued hearing, so I think it's fine for you to just reintroduce it, and Jay will get into the details. So I'll spare everyone that reading it again.
All right, well, thank you, everybody, and good to see everybody again. I'll try to be efficient with your time, but there's a bit of meat here to get through, so please bear with me. I believe all of you were here.
You have to identify yourself, please, for the membership.
Yep, Jay Monty, I'm the Director of Transportation for the City of Everett. I work in the Planning Department. So.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. So I guess what I'll do, I'm going to just run through the presentation we gave you back in November. I'm going to skip probably over some parts of it, but just to kind of refresh folks' memory of what we discussed back in November. And then the big thing this evening is that we have finalized the language of the ordinance itself. And I want to walk through that with folks so everybody understands, what it is, what it's doing, and what the expectation is from both applicants and from the board should this be adopted. So with that, I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Give me 1 second. All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. So just, real quickly, what are we doing here, and what is transportation demand management? So a big part of the reason we're doing this is we're trying to look at transportation more holistically. We're trying to, a lot of these zoning rules are written when, we were really trying to plan purely around, private vehicle travel and ownership. And we're now trying to correct some of that. We now have, a lot of congestion. We have, we're trying to bring on more transit options, more, bicycle options. We're trying to reduce overall trips being made because those trips, whether they're in a car or otherwise, are adding to congestion. So what this is meant to do is to create a more holistic mechanism by which we evaluate projects coming to the zoning board, the planning board rather, give you the tools to better mitigate the impacts of these projects. One of the big aspects that we'll get into is that with this ordinance, the issue of parking, if a developer does not meet the parking required under section 17, they will no longer be required to go to the zoning board for a variance. And instead, what this does is this measures the impact of that reduction in parking. It says basically, if you're only providing one space per unit and the zoning says 2, we're measuring that as an impact, but we're going to provide measures for you to mitigate that impact. And I think in doing so, this gives you, the board, a bit more power, a bit more leverage to, make sure the development fits the neighborhood to which it's being proposed. And I think that's a big part of it too. Some folks have asked, well, we did parking reform, or we tried to do parking reform a couple of years ago. You all voted on some reduced parking numbers for various sized units of housing. Why aren't we doing that? I think part of the answer is that every project in the city is different. A project, 600 on Broadway fits into a very different context than say 1690 Revere Beach Parkway. And so we're trying to not make this a one size fits all process, but one that gives flexibility to the board, to the applicant, to really fit what the needs are of the city, the neighborhood, and the developer. And so we do that through, measuring the impact of the trips being generated. We do that through looking at what other options are available to folks who live in those developments, whether it's access to the T, access to the bike path. And then we look to ways that the developer can supplement those or better utilize those. And just, you see on the slide, those are some of the, different things we're looking at here. Shuttles, transit passes. If you're looking at a T, developer may be able to subsidize T passes, telecommuting, flex work hours. Both these, if we're not talking residential, we're talking more commercial. Flex work hours are one way. And this is the same process, by the way, that the casino and Encore went through it at the state level with their MEPA process. We're basically replicating that at the city level. I'm just going to scroll through here real quickly. Again, the goal is to reduce congestion, reduce, parking footprint, to get our mode share. The number of folks who travel, we want the percentage of those traveling by car to be less. Right now, today, if you look at rush hour trips, for the same number of people, Everett produces twice as many trips because we have a higher driving mode share. So we want to bring that number down, over time. We'll talk a bit more about this later. The TMA, I know we talked about this last time a little bit. This is a separate entity. It's a tool really that will help us, enforce some of these measures, will help provide some of the services. It won't be under the purview of the planning board. In fact, it's not really under the purview of the city. It's going to be a standalone, nonprofit organization, which the city has a seat representation on, as do other developers. But it's a tool. We talked about it last time. If you have more questions on it, we have folks here. Allison Simmons is here from our consulting firm, who has actually started several TMAs, one in Assembly Row, and others around the North Shore. She can speak to that. So again, we're looking at just the TDM ordinance here tonight. This is, it can work without the TMA, but we're going to talk about it in the context of the TMA simply because that is the direction we are hoping to go. So I'm going to go over some slides because I know we talked about this last time. We're going to get into it more later. I want to just skip to this idea here of impacts and credits and how we work that. And I'm going to show you just an example so you have a better understanding. So the impact, we're going to derive an impact from the amount of traffic generated. So we'll get trips. I mean, we do this today, right? We ask an applicant to do a traffic study. We ask them to tell us how many trips are you generating, when are you generating those trips? Leo, you made a good point earlier with the 34 Market Street. It makes a big difference if somebody is generating those trips at 5 in the afternoon or at 1 in the morning. And yet we don't have a good tool today to hold somebody to, when they generate those trips. I think hopefully one of the things that will come out of this process is a better way to do that. Again, the casino actually operates under those premises that they are required to stay within a certain number of trips generated during the day. So parking being above or below the zoning requirements will trigger an impact. And we say that because if you go below, presumably folks are going to be traveling using a different mode. And so therefore, the applicant should, pay into some mitigation to enable that other mode. If they go above the zoning requirements, the argument is really, well, they're generating more traffic because we're encouraging more folks to drive. We're encouraging, whether it's it could be a commercial space that they feel that they want more parking than the zoning says is required. But that in turn would mean there's going to be more traffic. So those are, the impacts. And then we look to the credits and say, well, here are ways you can, take credit and bring those numbers down. So you can provide a shuttle to the T station. You can provide free MBTA passes to your workers or to your residents, bicycle parking, carpool and rideshare programs. So those are all things that will build your credit. I'm going to reshare my screen again because I want to show a little more about what that looks like. Can you bear with me for 1 second? So we're going to see this chart now. These are just examples, and this is not set in stone at this point. One of the things that's going to be sort of a little bit flexible is how we assign the points. And this would be something that we'd work with the planning board, work with our consultants and the TMA to kind of constantly updating us a little bit to better reflect the needs and kind of the realities on the ground. But if we look to, impacts here, we have each of 3 categories. We have peak hour trip ends. So basically if you're generating traffic and trips, vehicle trips during rush hour, that's going to be a negative point you're going to accrue. So, if you're, 6090 Greenwich Parkway and you have 800 units, you're probably going to be generating, 600 or 700 trips in the peak hour, and you're going to accrue, somewhere close to 20 points just for that. But also, if you, through your analysis, you reduce the level of service at an intersection. So, we've had the concern about, Boston Street or Vale Street and Greenwich Beach Parkway, that these developments are going to impact those intersections. We're assessing points if you reduce the level of service, say from a letter C to a letter E, that's 2 points. Again, we don't have a great mechanism today to say, we asked for the study, we asked for that analysis, but we don't really have a way to quantify that to say what the applicant then should do to mitigate that. And this would hopefully start to provide that mechanism. And again, down below, just talking about the parking again, if you're deviating from the section 17 requirement for parking, we're going to assess a number of points for that. So as the applicant goes through this process, they're going to, sum up their points. And then we have another table on here about how you can kind of redeem those points, right? So if you provide a shuttle, and even depending on what, intensity you run the shuttle, right? So a shuttle that runs, 7 days a week from early morning to late evening is worth a lot more points than one that just runs sort of at rush hour on weekdays, right? Because it's providing a better tool for folks to make their trips. Transit passes, ride share, parking management, all these are the types of things that we would be, developer could choose from to mitigate their impacts. And I think one of the great things about this is that this is where you can design something that really suits the development, where it is. You can take a project like the 600, let's say, and say they're on 3 different bus lines. So, giving transit passes for free, that's a great tool for them. It may not be a great tool for, say, the Lennar development down on Norman Street, where they're not really near a good transit service. So, the better tool for them may be to run that shuttle to Wellington Station. And so, again, we're trying to create a system here where you're kind of a group negotiation of the administration, planning department, planning board, and the applicant. We can build, a program that fits the development and mitigates, the impacts. The other places is really good too is with medium size and smaller developments. So we've set the threshold for how folks get triggered into this ordinance, and I'll go back to that in a moment. But one of the thresholds is, you only need to have 10 units to be triggered into this ordinance. A 20-unit development isn't going to completely foul up, an intersection, but it still has an impact. And so we're still able to measure that impact, and we're still able to then ask them to provide amenities, many of which will be available to the public, by the way. If you have a bike share station that's, a publicly accessible amenity, that's something that the city, can benefit from as well. So we're able to start to get some more mitigation from those small and medium-sized developments that today is just really hard to, do a traffic study and say that they're, impacting something so significantly, we can't ask them to rebuild a whole intersection when they only have, 10, 20 units. Go back here. Bear with me again here. So one of the other things that is going to go with this is parking reform. And that's also on the agenda tonight. If there was a way I could take these together, I would. What I'll say about parking reform is the other agenda item on your docket tonight is going to restrict access to residential sticker parking, because one of the things that we're doing with this ordinance is taking the Zoning Board of Appeals out of the equation. And for the last 2 years or so, what they've said is if you're going to deviate from the required amount of parking, you don't get resident stickers. That's sort of been a protection against a developer who wants to build less parking, but for the neighborhood, the neighborhood doesn't want people, instead parking on their street if there's not enough spaces, or they choose not to pay for that parking space on the development. So we'll talk a little bit about that more later. But in order for this to work, if we're going to take the process out of the Zoning Board of Appeals, we're going to have to address the sticker parking situation and place some restrictions on that. So I'll stop there if anybody has any questions, and then we'll move into the language, and we can kind of parse that a bit. Anybody have anything they want to ask or comment about?
On the previous screen, the Everett TDM ordinance user guide.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go to page 7.
On this slide or a different one?
No, the one you had before that, Jay.
Yeah. Okay.
It just has to be quickly. It has to do with unbundling resident parking from the lease.
Yeah.
And when and I just keep going, it's the next page. When you go ahead and unbundle it, then it says page 7 is you're looking for.
Oh, sorry.
All right. Right there. Stop right there.
Yep.
On the credits, it says unbundling residential parking from the lease.
Yeah.
Right beside it, all units will have to lease parking separately. They will it mandates them to lease it, or it's a request, because this gets under the, where the stickers come in.
Hmm.
That if the site plan review has allocated parking for them, they should have to use it. And they should not get parking stickers, because all they're
Right.
gonna do is go out and park on the street. We talked about this already.
Yep.
And they're gonna be all over the street. So
Right.
this draft has to integrate with the resident parking sticker program.
Right.
Because I can
So-
see someone getting credits for unbundling when I think we shouldn't unbundle. I think if you lease, you're renting an apartment and it comes with a parking space, you should have to use it.
Right.
And you shouldn't get the parking sticker, because you want to lower your rent. They'll say, I can save $200 a week. I'll just
Right.
get my resident parking sticker. I'll go park outside the building, which is exactly what we don't want to happen, because the poor people in the area of these buildings are going to kind of get jammed with a lot of parking.
Yeah,
So-
you're absolutely right. I completely agree.
Okay.
And what I would say to that is, and the reason we're trying to advance this in parallel with the resident sticker change is to address that exact point, right? Because just from a, I guess, ordinance legal perspective, I can't dictate parking stickers through a zoning ordinance. I have to address it through the parking ordinance. So they have to be separate for that reason. But I guess what we're asking you all to do is look at these together, look at both the TDM ordinance and the parking ordinance together tonight. And, hopefully we get a positive recommendation with the condition that if you were to say, we recommend the TDM ordinance be passed, but on the condition that, the parking sticker ordinance also pass as well, because I completely agree that they're two really inseparable items. So that's just one, I guess that's how I would address your concern, Leo.
Yeah. Plus, it's like anything else, Jay, just because it's a law, doesn't mean it's infallible. We can always change things later on.
Yeah, of course, we would always revisit through, as we're doing here, right? So,
Yeah.
so, this is all a big change in the way we look at things. I think what this tries to do is address some of the board's concerns, as much as we try to advance, our policy initiatives. I think it also tries to address some of your concerns, which is you don't have a lot of leverage when something goes to the ZBA. So, by taking out of the ZBA, we add some more process here, more structure. It gives you some more leverage to say to an applicant, yeah, you need to fix that intersection. You need to, because it says here, you accrued some points because you failed an intersection. So there's I think a lot more room for you all. The other thing I'll point out too, when we talk about this point system, we're actually capping the number of points that you can redeem using this table here. We're saying that you can only redeem 20 points off of this table. If you were to take, again, I use 1690 Rivers Parkway, where you say Market Forge, they're going to be accruing a lot more than 20 points. So what we're saying, we're going to say is beyond 20 points, you're going to now be obliged to get into a negotiation with the planning board, with the city, to talk about infrastructure improvements. Perfect example of that is with Market Forge, where we negotiated 15 feet of street right-of-way on 2nd Street to accommodate the future Silver Line. So that would be an example where they've done a whole bunch of other things. They get to their 20 points. They still have another 20 to mitigate. And the other document I think you all have is the Everett Transportation Strategy, which sort of lays out some of the projects and policy initiatives that we're looking to do. One of those is the 2nd Street Silver Line alignment. So we'd be pointing to that document to look for appropriate infrastructure mitigation for these larger projects. Any other questions before I move on to the language? I'll take that as a no. So I'm going to share screen again to the language. So I'll try to move through this at a reasonable pace, but feel free to stop me, slow me down, ask questions along the way. So again, the purpose is to achieve what we have just discussed, of providing transportation demand management for new developments. I'm going to skip the definitions, and those are self-explanatory. I want to get down to section B here, applicability. I think this is really important. This is going to tell you guys when somebody, is going to be triggered into this section. I should note too, we're going to change this to section 35. We found out earlier section 34 is already taken.
Jay, there was a more recent draft that was circulated.
Okay.
It has section 35 noted in it. It was sent somewhere around like 4 o'clock today.
Yeah, I think it would make sense if we could screen share that one.
Okay, let me do that real quick. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah, Jay, for you, it's sent from Ralph Danisco at 4:07 p.m. today.
And just, I'm here and have it if you can find it, Jay.
Yeah, I know I saw it earlier. Yeah, here we go.
And just for the board's sake, this is Robin. We originally set this up to be section 34 of the zoning ordinance, and then just doing our final checks, remember and realize there is already a new section 34, which is short-term rentals. So we just changed this to section 35. So the most current version folks have should say section 35.
So this is, no, it's not one. I'm still getting the same one. Hang on a sec. I'm sorry. There we go. Okay. So there's going to be 4 conditions by which a project will be triggered into need to comply with section 35, this TDM ordinance. The first is their development intensity. So they can trigger that in one of 4 ways. 10,000 square feet of non-commercial, or sorry, not non-residential commercial space. So, most of the projects we see, I mean, we just had 34 Market Street, well, 250,000 square feet, they would fall into this very easily. 10 residential dwelling units. So, and just so folks understand why we chose these numbers, we want to get the projects that are going to create an impact, but not touch every single, every time somebody goes from a, 1 unit to a 2 unit project, we don't want to sort of overburden the system, as it were, making them go crazy with analysis and things like that. So 10 we felt was a appropriate number of dwelling units, 10 hotel rooms, and 10 school or other educational classrooms. So, the charter schools would be certainly large enough to fall into this. Whether they legally would, I think is questionable, but we would certainly hope that they would work with us. And again, providing that framework to work with us maybe would be an incentive. Access constraints. So if they're in a perfect example, the Gateway Shopping Center, right? One way in, one way out. That type of situation where, the traffic congestion will be burdened by limited access. And this is a little bit nebulous here, but we together, the planning board and the administration would determine this, but that would be one way to force somebody into this ordinance. Total number of trips, any development generating at least 500 total daily trip ends. 500 is a decent number. I think that's something you would get from probably 100 or more units of housing. But again, it's not even 100 units would already be caught under here. 500 trips would also be, warehouse. It would be other commercial uses as well. A large restaurant could fall under that. And the last one would be parking provided above or below minimum requirements. And we discussed that already. The other thing to note here is that, developments that are 10 units, but are what's the best way to put this? Exclusively residential developments that are less than 10 units would be exempt. So why are we saying this? If somebody comes in and they have a small bodega on the bottom floor, a little coffee shop, not going to generate a lot of trips, not going to trigger these other things, and they have 7, or 7 or 8 units above, great. But we want to also make sure that if the commercial space plus say 7 or 8 of those units really does, demand a need for somebody to do, to mitigate their transportation, that we're doing that. So what we're saying here is that, only if you're exclusively residential and you're below 10 are you exempt. If you're 7 but you have mixed use on the bottom, you may not be exempt if you trip any of these other thresholds. Section 4, I'll just highlight these as I go along. This is just basically saying this is going to be done through the site plan process, and through that site plan process, the application will include at a minimum the transportation demand management plan with the project description, and that project shall include trip generation estimates. It shall include proposed vehicle and bicycle parking, and that's the case whether it's a phase development or single phase development. But that's where this analysis will take place through the site plan process. Sorry, somebody have a question? Nope. These next two are important for you guys. No parking variance or special permit authorizing a reduction in the number of off-street parking spaces shall be required for any development that meets one or more of the aforesaid thresholds and proposes to provide less than the required number of parking spaces for that development. In other words, this is what we're saying. You come in with 1 space per unit and the zoning says 2, we're not requiring you to go to the zoning board anymore, so long as you comply with the other parts of this ordinance. And that goes along with section 6, which says the zoning board may not grant a variance from this section. So nobody can come in here and say, we want a variance from this this TDM ordinance. They're required to comply with it. That there's no other option. Number 7, pre-application conference. We do this already. We meet with applicants to kind of walk them through the process and the expectations. That really isn't any different than what we do today. So requirements in section C. You guys have been requiring TMA membership for most of your approvals for the last, I think, 2 years now. So that will just continue in the same way it always has. We will now have with that, however, an actual fee schedule of what the financial commitment is. So Allison Simmons, who's on the call with us, has worked to develop that. So we'll be able to see very openly what that developer will be expected to pay into, and what their obligations will be with the organization. Again, if there's no TMAs in section 2, in the absence of a TMA, because it's not a city run body, this just says that you're still required to adhere to all the other requirements of this ordinance. If you agreed to do transit passes and bike share, the TMA isn't there anymore, well, you still need to do those 2 things. If the TMA was running a shuttle for you and you still have the shuttle commitment, but you still need to run the shuttle on your own if the TMA ceases to exist. So this section here, section 3, this just says the applicant can provide its own services beyond those made available by the TMA. So if the TMA chooses not to run its own shuttle, the applicant can do it on its own. But what it also says, I believe, is that basically it has to be accessible to all ADA requirements. They're still not exempt from anything in this ordinance. And if in the case that they choose to hand off that service to the TMA, they will still be required to help pay for that service. Calculation of impacts and credits. So we talked about this already. So they'll be assigned an impact score based on That's those three things: parking, trip generation, and traffic impact. And they're required to document that impact when they file their site plan application. And they'll also be required to, calculate their credits based on the mitigation they're proposing. Section or number 6 here, this is where we talked about the upper limits. So we're going to set an upper limit to what you can get through that point system, and then we're going to say beyond that, I'll highlight this section here. The city may request other contributions to infrastructure, services, or other public assets of the city in a way that mitigates the impact represented in that portion of the impact score. This shall be based on a rational nexus between the nature of the impact and the mitigation being requested or offered. So again, the example of Market Forge, where if they would have gone through this process, they would have scored well above 20 points, and we would have used that to say, you need to provide that space on 2nd Street for the Silver Line. We could have also said, you need to add a traffic signal. We also need to add a turn lane. This is where we create that mechanism to compel somebody to provide kind of more significant infrastructure. The last section, or the next section here is, monitoring and reporting requirements. So there's a lot here that we're asking folks to do a lot, and we ought to be keeping track of whether or not they're doing it. And this is some place where we hope that the TMA, the Transportation Management Association, will actually provide that service. They will, each year do the counts, do the surveys, find out if a developer is meeting their commitments, if they're staying below the trip generation that they promised. Back to 34 Market Street, good question about, well, we don't know who the tenant is, and what if they come in here and they generate far more trips than what they're saying they're going to generate now? Well, doing it this way, we may have written into the condition to say you can only generate X number of trips during the hours of 4 to 7 p.m. And the TMA will go and annually measure if they are adhering to that commitment. If they're not, we provide a mechanism here to then compel them to meet that requirement, including coming back to this board potentially, or other types of enforcement. We would obviously work with them to try to get compliance before we take any action, but we are, section E here, the last section is enforcement. That can be enforced through the planning director or the building commissioner if they don't meet those commitments. So again, we're trying to keep this holistic, keep this flexible, but also provide the mechanisms that sort of ensure that the commitments that these folks make can be upheld. And the last section here, severability, just saying that if any single one of these provisions is held invalid, the others will still be valid. So if you have any questions. I guess I should ask this, do folks want to take another week to look through this and read it before issuing a recommendation? Are folks comfortable with this? I'm just looking for any thoughts folks have at this point.
Just wanted to say quickly, I don't know if I have a vote on this, but thank you for the presentation, guys. Everybody who worked on this, I think this is really a very progressive, very smart vision for rationing down the problem of traffic in the future and preventing its growth going forward. Thank you for the presentation. Looks really great.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the board? Any comments? Thank you, Jim, for yours.
So at some point, I do want to get to a point where we ask for your positive recommendation to the council. I don't want to do that until we've also discussed the parking sticker ordinance. I don't know the best way to do that without, we have to close this segment of the meeting to do that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, you don't have to technically close the section of the meeting. You could just let folks know that you're going to pause this discussion and pick up the discussion of the traffic ordinance, and then you may return to this discussion later in the meeting. It's really up to the board.
Or the
I
board
don't know
can
if they're-
act on this part.
Yes.
Is that correct?
You certainly could act on it now. I think Jay was saying you might want to have that other discussion first, but it's totally up to the board. I also don't know if there's any members of the public that have any comments or questions on this, but it's up to your discretion. I was just letting you know it is okay to pause the conversation and come back.
Well, I think the sticker program is altogether another situation that has to be brought up as well. So
Yes.
we can just act at this one, and it has nothing to do with this one, the sticker issue. Is that correct, Robin?
That's more of a Jay question. I think that's
So
how those things relate. It's not really a legal question.
I guess what I would say is that the sticker question is important because, we're taking the issue of parking away from the ZBA. And in doing so, we need to add some protections to ensure that, if we're going to be encouraging, reduced parking numbers or restricting parking on site, that we're protecting the neighborhoods from folks who might simply try to park their car in the neighborhood. So I am asking, ultimately that, if one passes, the other also passes, because I think we could create a problem if we pass only the ordinance being discussed now. We would be creating a problem with folks then parking in the street, and we'd have no mechanism to control that.
All right.
Yeah, but the new sticker program, Jay, has not been approved by the traffic commission.
Correct. So, and again, if folks want to wait to vote on this till the next meeting, I'm fine with that. I don't want to rush anybody. But I think, so certainly this body carries a lot of weight. If you give a recommendation for both this ordinance and for the parking, I think that bodes pretty well when this goes to the council. I'm fairly confident the sticker ordinance will pass, positively with the traffic commission, but they may have comments, they may have things they want to change about it. So, I'll leave it up to you whether you want to, and Leo, if you want to chime in on your thoughts on this, please feel free.
I would pass that. I would give it a favorable recommendation for the new section 35, but I would hold off on the sticker program to the traffic commission reviews it. There were a lot of comments on that, Jay. There were the number of letters that were sent in on that, and as far as the sergeant Gaff, he's still got a lot of questions on it too. So
okay,
once it's finalized, it's obviously not a problem. But this section 35 seems to be, just my personal opinion, fine.
Okay, great. If you guys are comfortable doing that, then let's do that.
Jay, I got a question on the residential sticker real quick though. How does that work with, they also, when you have a residential sticker, they're also on a private drive. So when you have a visitor's pass, that works as almost as a extra parking spot, correct?
Yeah, actually, do you want to hold off this question until we close this section, and then we'll get to the parking sticker?
Very good.
All right? Okay,
Yep.
Great.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to
I'll make a motion for favorable recommendation on section 35 to the city council.
We have to
public
close it
hearing?
first.
Sorry.
We have to
Sorry,
close
yeah.
it first, please.
I'm sorry.
Well, can we just confirm if there's any, I don't know if Matt has
Anybody out
anybody.
there that'd like to speak?
None that I see, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now the chair will entertain a
you.
motion, to close the public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing for section 35.
Second motion.
Motion is made and seconded to close the public hearing for section 35. Roll call vote, please.
Leo Pizzano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangle,
Yes.
and Chairman Capasso.
Yes. Motion is passed to send it off to the city council.
Great. Thank you very much. I
correct?
appreciate that.
That was.
No, that was for the hearing.
Oh, you
Oh,
have
sorry.
to close
That-
the meeting.
Okay.
That was close. Okay. Now the chair will entertain a motion for the
Now we'll
favorable
make-
action, I believe.
Okay, now we'll make a motion for favorable recommendation on section 35 to the city council from the planning board.
And
Second the
Jay,
motion.
Did you want to have in that motion, make a recommendation for favorable action on section 35 and the related zoning ordinance changes?
Yes,
Okay.
and sorry, just to clarify there's just some language in the other sections of zoning that just referenced this new section 35. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yep, they were in the legal ad for this.
Are those three
Located
items
in
down there?
section 17 and section 30 in the zoning.
Yeah, there were three items down there. You're gonna include
Yep.
that in then? Okay.
Yes.
So then we'll make a motion for favorable action, make a motion for favorable recommendation on section 35 and relating to the zoning ordinance changes to the city council from the planning board.
Second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded for favorable action to refer this to the city council. Roll call vote, please.
Leo Pisano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangle,
Yes.
and Chairman Cafaso.
Yes, motion is passed. Thank you.
Again, thank you all. So we'll move on to I'll go ahead. Parking, I guess now, right?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, the next item on the agenda is item number 1 under new business. This is an ordinance amendment, residential or resident stickers, to amend section 18-149, quote, citywide resident sticker regulations, end quote, and section 18-150, quote, applying for a resident sticker, end quote, of the revised ordinances of the city of Everett to revise the eligibility for resident parking stickers for new large residential developments. This matter was referred to the planning board for recommendation by the Traffic Commission and the Everett City Council.
Thank you. Mr. Monty?
All right, let me share my screen again here if I can get this to work. Everybody see the section 18-149? Okay. So again, we're proposing this change because now that we don't have the zoning board of appeals in the process of parking issue, we need a way to ensure that if we do have a development that has a smaller number of parking spaces, that we're not going to create the situation where those folks we either don't want to pay for an on-site space or don't have one, simply park their car in the neighborhood. So the changes to this attempt to rectify that situation. And normally this would be something that would just go to the Traffic Commission, but again, because of the close linkage to the zoning ordinance, I wanted to bring it here as well. So the first couple of changes are pretty minor. One just saying that it used to be the case that, or is currently the case that you're actually technically required to have a parking sticker, even if you don't want to park a car on the street. Just by being a resident in Everett, owning a car, you're required to have a sticker. That can no longer be the case if we're going to take that privilege away from some folks. So we brought a clause in here to define basically small or single family structures versus large multi-family structures. So what we're going to say here is if you live in a structure that's 4, 3, 2, or 1 units, nothing really changes. So this changes only for properties that are 5 units or larger. So we've broken out that sort of definition to large and small developments. And then what we're adding for that is a section C here in red. So what we're saying is if for structures that are 5 residential units and larger, the parking stickers won't be distributed to the individuals directly. They'll be distributed through the building manager. And when the project is proposed, they'll have a site plan. They'll come to the parking clerk, and what we're going to measure is how much street frontage they have. So we took a project on Broadway that had 100 feet of street frontage. We assume a car takes up 20 feet of space to park. We're going to divide that 100 feet by 20 feet. and we're going to come to 5 individual spaces. And so in that case, the project will be eligible for 5 stickers. It will be up to the owner and manager of that building to distribute those stickers, however they saw fit. They can't charge for it. We've included that clause in here. But it may be the case that somebody has 10 units. Maybe they have 7 spots in the back, and they want to be able to say they have 3 more places to park. Well, they could, then go get 3 parking stickers because they'd be eligible for 3 or 4 spaces out front. But it prevents them from, giving out 20 or 30, which is what today I think each unit is allowed at least 2 stickers. So this would drastically cut down on the number of stickers being distributed to large buildings. All the usual requirements, you got to prove your vehicle is registered here, you got to pay the excise tax, any parking tickets, that doesn't change. The difference really is just that the building manager now is providing the parking clerk with that information. It's not coming from the residents themselves. Other important note here, this only applies to new units. So we have plenty of apartments throughout the city that have no parking. They're older, they're from the 1910s, 1920s. Those folks park on the street and they'll continue to be able to park on the street. That won't change, at least not with this amendment. So I believe that's really all of it. It's not particularly complicated. We've spoken with the parking clerk as to whether they can manage this, and it seems like they can. That's part of the reason for choosing the 5 units as opposed to kind of getting everybody in on this. We just felt that we want to keep this to a manageable program, and 5 and above units seem to be the way to do that. The other question that's come up is, why even give folks stickers at all in these buildings, right? If they're large projects, why does 1690, I keep bringing this up, but 1690 for Rich Parker, why do they need stickers at all? They should have none. I think the answer to that is, we could go that route, and some cities have done that. Somerville does that. They don't issue resident stickers for any new projects. But I think there is some value in providing some. I think it is prudent to utilize the street space we have for parking where it's appropriate, but just to do so in a managed way. So I brought up the example earlier. Took a project that maybe was just short 2 or 3 parking spaces on site, that they could still rely possibly on getting a couple of resident stickers to make up that difference. And I think that's important to think about on some of these mid-sized and smaller projects where they're not going to build a parking garage, they're not going to go underground, which means that providing more spaces means taking up more more space on their site. It could be paving over grass, they're paving over what could be a garden or some other amenity that we'd like to see. This would just give them a little bit of flexibility. But if that's something that folks feel strongly about, that we'd rather just give out no parking stickers, certainly it's easier to manage. Something we can entertain. So, folks have any questions, comments?
I gave you 2 pages of comments on that. Were they incorporated into this? I mean, like I say again, the Traffic Commission hasn't even seen this yet.
Right.
And they need to vote on that, if I'm not mistaken, Jay.
Mm-hmm. So I haven't incorporated those yet. I think that, to the point of I'm not looking for a vote necessarily tonight. I think these are all points for discussion. And if you want to discuss any one of those, happy to do so.
I have to plead that I have not read this yet. I haven't read this. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I haven't read it. I think we basically should get a copy of it, put it off to the next meeting, and I think you should wait to see what the Traffic Commission's recommendations are on it.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Any other comments out there in Zoom land?
Well, I have a comment on, we're talking about these parking stickers and all that, and, giving more cars out in the streets. I noticed that when you bring up winter, and what happens in the wintertime, they call snow emergencies. Now, if we have these big buildings being, built and we have streets, it's going to have parking on the street. They move their cars onto the side streets. That causes more problems because the side streets are only one-sided parking. Where does everybody go? We don't talk about that. You know what I mean? When we start talking about the parking in the city.
So what I would say to that is kind of taking a step back and thinking today, we do very little to regulate the number of stickers given out. We give out far more stickers to folks than we actually have space on the street to park.
Mhm.
And that exasperates kind of what you're talking about, which is when we have a situation like snow or other where folks need to move and go somewhere else, we really don't have space to do that because we've already given out too many stickers.
Right.
What this does is it starts to right size the number of stickers actually given out. We looked at some other cities who have done things similar, and they actually, interestingly, gave out twice as many stickers for the same space that we would be giving out. So instead of being, one car for every one sticker for every 20 feet, it would be two. And their logic was, well, people aren't there all day. Folks go out, they shop, and so therefore it's not as if one car occupies that space all the time. The reason we went with less was, I think, to partly address this idea that we've already well oversubscribed the resident stickers. We have far too many for the street space we have. So we should really be trying to dial that back and kind of be conservative.
Well, there's also another issue. If you get people get visitors parking, are we looking at the visitors parking situation? Because people are abusing that thing and using them for work vehicles, which that's not what it's designed for, correct?
Correct. So that's actually another item that is currently in front of the Traffic Commission and the council. The Traffic Commission actually voted on last Wednesday night to adopt a new set of regulations regarding visitor passes that would crack down on the ability to do that. So like today, you can, in theory, get consecutive passes that would allow you to the park all the time. Right. That's going away.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I'm all set.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, one comment. Leo can answer this. Will the Traffic Commission have a meeting before our next meeting to look this all over?
Next Traffic Commission meeting is, let me just look at my phone a moment, please. Next Traffic Commission is the 17th of February. So it's actually after. I guess our next meeting is the 8th.
Right.
Yeah.
So we meet a week. So the Traffic Commission meets a week after. Just to satisfy some of Phil's questions, there was a lot of comments at that traffic meeting about restricting totally no resident stickers, period, for these big buildings. Site plan review says you get so many parking spaces under the ordinance. So why are people that are in a building that has a parking space designated for them going out to the street? Well, they're doing that because the landlords are unbundling, and that's what this whole unbundling means. They're saying if you lease an apartment, it comes with a parking space, and it costs you $200 a month. But if you don't want to pay the $200 a month, you don't have to, which lets them go get a resident parking sticker and park out in the street. And then the parking spot that was designated for them on the site plan review sits there unused. So if we gave them a parking space, they should have to pay for it. It should be in the rent, should not be unbundled, and they should use it. So you take a lot of the big buildings that are going up, and if a quarter of the people decided, I don't want to pay the $200 a month, I want to park out on the street, what are you going to do then? They have a right to get a sticker, or do they? And I said that to Jay. What gives them the right to get a sticker? Well, you can write an ordinance that says they don't get a sticker, period. You live in a big multi-family building, you don't get a resident parking sticker. You have a parking spot, use it, pay for it in your rent as an agreement in your lease, period. Now you can back off a little bit and say that's kind of strict. And this is where this has been bouncing back and forth. How do you be fair to everybody?
Right.
And it's very, very difficult. I don't envy Jay's position at all. I sent them a 2-page suggestions, not only to him, but to Joe Gaff he's the sergeant in charge of the Traffic Commission. And it's just so many flaws, not flaws, but so many loopholes that people can use So you have to start with one basic premise. If you got a big building, and you don't want to have them park in the street, you tell them you're not getting a sticker, and you have to use the spot that was designated for you under the site plan review. That's why we look at those things. And you know, you just have to get a little mean, I guess, with it, you know, so.
And that's basically what we're saying, Leo, and this goes pretty close to that. If you think of, you know, what these larger projects, if you were to take all their street frontage and add up how many spaces that would be, might be like, you know, 10 or 20 for 800 unit building. It's not really a significant number compared to the number of units. So there would be very few people that would actually be able to do that. And the building owner may say, you know what, I don't even want to deal with it. So I'm not going to bother. I think where we wanted to leave the opportunity for some resident parking really had to do more with the smaller projects, you know, where you see, you know, 6, 7 units on Main Street or on Broadway, you know, where they might come back and ask for 1 or 2 at most. And it just allows you guys really to actually maybe get some other things on the site that you know, if you want landscaping, if you want, you know, certain building features that ultimately take up space. You know, space is always at a premium and competing very often with parking. So we just want to leave that little bit of flexibility in there. You know, to your point, we don't want folks, you know, skirting the rules, not paying for their on-site space and getting a resident sticker instead. That's precisely what this ordinance is here to address. Whether we do that by saying you get 0 or maybe you get a couple, I think is you know, a good question and one that you know, certainly we're open to feedback on.
We even came up with a suggestion that these people that are in these big buildings, if you were to choose, like I say, got to be a little fair, well, they are residents, so you give them a sticker. But you also put a caveat on it that says you can't park within 1,000 feet of your own address. It's like, you can't give them a spot and then they don't use it and they go out in the street. So you say, all right, here's your sticker, but you can't park within 1,000 feet of your own building. Doesn't seem fair, but it does kind of solve the problem a little bit. Those that are determined to do it will walk the quarter mile and whatever. So I don't know. Let's throw it back to the traffic commission. I think let them resolve it. It's not time sensitive that this has to be done right away. So let the traffic commission, that Joe Gaff's doing a great job. The members are, we're trying to get this resolved with total fairness to everybody. Okay. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody out there in Zoom land?
Not that I say.
Hearing nothing, the chair can entertain a motion for continuance and whatever you want to do.
I'll make a motion for continuance on the resident sticker program until the traffic commission has an opportunity to vote on it and presents it back to us.
Do you want to set a date for that, or is it just?
You have to give a date when you want to continue to, please.
It's February 22nd is the one after the 8th.
Okay, so then I make a motion to continue the new.
Is there a meeting the 22nd or is it, because is that a holiday or is it the 23rd?
It says Monday the 22nd, but is that a holiday?
Is that President's Day? I'm not sure. I could be wrong.
President's Day is the 15th. President's Day is the 15th.
Okay, then I'm wrong. 22nd.
Yeah, we do have a meeting on the 22nd, so I'll make a motion that the new sticker program ordinance amendment gets a continuance until February 22nd at 7 o'clock on Zoom.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to continue the sticker program ordinance until February 22nd. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Roll call vote.
Leo Pizzano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangle,
Yes.
and Chairman Cafaso.
Yes. Motion is continued. Next order of business, please.
That would be it.
That's it.
That's it. Oh,
Oh, really? That's it?
the chair will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
Motion is made and seconded for adjournment. Roll call vote, please.
Neil Pisano,
Yes.
Michael O'Connor,
Yes.
George D'Angelo,
Yes.
Cheyenne Rangle,
Yes.
Chairman Cafaso.
Yes. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the
Have a good
8th
evening.
of February.
All right.
You all-
Matt, do you have
Have a good
the
one.
schedule for?
Thank you.
this year
Good night.
Have a
Agenda.
nice Valentine's
schedule
Day.
for 2021.
Thanks, Leo.
Thank you.
Fred. I'll see you in my,
Thank you, and I
see you in my
can-
I'm looking
backyard.
at
I'm
you
sleeping
and
my-
I'm-
Hey, before that.
I'm sleeping my books, oh Fred. Anytime you come
I am
by.
going to take this.
Leo,
Ah,
Leo, I like dark chocolate.
okay. I'll make sure. Where's Louise?